500 lives. That was the price of a single share when it began. 18 months later, that same share sold for 10,000, a 20-fold rise, all on paper. Then it fell all the way back to 500, and took the wealth of a nation with it. In a single year, the French money supply doubled, and prices climbed as fast as 23% in 1 month. And on the crowded streets of Paris, people coined a brand new word for the men suddenly rich beyond reason: millionaire. The man behind it was not a French banker. He was a Scottish gambler who had killed a man in a duel and fled his own country to escape the gallows. His name was John Law. This film is presented for historical and informational purposes. Every figure in this story is long deceased, and every fact is drawn from the public record. If you enjoy these stories, consider subscribing so you never miss a case. The Gambler. John Law was born in Edinburgh in the spring of 1671, the son of a goldsmith and moneylender. He grew up around gold, credit, and debt, and he learned early that money was really just a promise people agreed to believe. But his brilliance came with a vice. Law was a gambler and a duelist. On the 9th of April, 1694, in London's Bloomsbury Square, he ran a man named Edward Wilson through with a single thrust of his sword. He was convicted and sentenced to death. He escaped, fled across the Channel, and spent 20 years drifting through the gambling houses of Europe, perfecting one idea that would remate and then wreck an entire kingdom: the machine. By 1715, France was broke. The endless wars of Louis XIV had buried the crown under a mountain of debt, owed in gold coin that simply did not exist. The new ruler, the Regent Philippe, Duke of Orleans, was desperate enough to listen to a foreigner with a radical plan. Law's plan was simple to say and dangerous to do. Replace scarce gold with paper. A bank could print notes, back them with trust and trade, and set a frozen economy moving again. It was, for its time, revolutionary. On the 20th of May, 1716, Law opened the Banque Générale, a private bank with the power to issue its own paper money. For the first time, Frenchmen could hold a banknote instead of a coin. Trade quickened, confidence returned. It worked so well that in December of 1718, the state took the bank over, renaming it the Banque Royale. Now the notes carried the guarantee of the king himself. John Law held the printing press of a kingdom in his hands. Then came the second half of the machine. In 1717, the regent handed Law control of France's vast, half-imagined colony in North America, Louisiana. Law built it into a new venture, the Company of the West, soon known simply as the Mississippi Company. The company was granted a 25-year monopoly on trade with an entire continent. Its shares sold for 500 livres each, and here was the trick: you could buy them not with gold, but with the government's own near-worthless debt notes at full face value. In May of 1719, Law merged his company with France's East India and China trading firms into a single colossus, the Compagnie des Indes. One company now claimed a monopoly on almost all of France's overseas trade. The frenzy began. The Mania. The rise was nearly vertical. In June of 1719, a share cost 750 livres. By July, 1,000. A week later, 2,000. By August, 3,000. Crowds packed a narrow Paris street called the Rue Quincampoix, screaming to buy at any price. Servants grew richer than their masters. A man who bought early could retire in weeks. At the peak, a single share touched 10,000 livres, 20 times where it started. Paris had never seen anything like it, and it never would again. But beneath the paper, nothing had changed. Louisiana was not a land of gold and silver. It was swamp, fever, and a handful of struggling settlers. The company earned almost nothing. Its soaring value rested entirely on the belief that it would keep soaring. To keep the shares climbing, Law needed ever more money chasing them, so the Banque Royale simply printed more notes. In February of 1720, the company and the bank were fused into one. Now the shares, the paper money, and the debt of France were tied into a single fragile knot. The collapse. By early 1720, the money supply had doubled, and prices were rising as fast as 23% in a single month. The confidence that built the boom curdled into fear. Holders began quietly trading their paper shares back for hard gold. Law tried to stop the bleeding by decree, cutting the official value of the shares and the notes at a stroke. It shattered the one thing the whole system was built from: trust. The unease became a stampede. The shares fell as fast as they had risen. 2,000 livres by September, 1,000 by December, and by the next autumn, back to 500, exactly where they began. Every livre of paper wealth had evaporated. On the 29th of May, 1720, John Law was stripped of his office. The most powerful financier in Europe became the most hated man in France almost overnight. Fearing for his life, that December, he slipped out of the country and into exile. He died in Venice in 1729, poor, living once more off the gambling tables, the man who had briefly held the wealth of France in his hands and watched it turn back into paper. Law's experiment was not simply a swindle. It was a real idea: paper money, credit, a central bank, pushed past the edge of trust until it broke. Every one of those ideas outlived him, and so did the lesson he taught the world about them. Empires built on paper always burn. If this was worth your time, subscribe and stay for the next one.